This episode of Man Enough highlights some sensitive topics, including child sexual abuse.
Please stay tuned afterwards to watch a very special PSA featuring my wife, Emily, and join the conversation. Guys, this is a really delicate, sensitive topic. Thank you guys for being here. It's a crazy time right now. We thought it was really important to address what's happening in the world, but specifically also in Hollywood. I mean, every single day it's another story, and people seem completely shocked and blindsided. I'm just curious, how do you guys feel as men right now navigating this this climate, this world?
Scared. I'm a little scared just because I think it's not going to stop. I think we're going to keep seeing this. And there's people that I didn't think would be coming out like this. There's a lot of stories of people in my space who are interviewers. It's like every space, from CEOs to actors to executives to interviewers to men in powerful positions. So for me, it's just like, it's a lot of people.
Yeah, certainly. As we've glorified the idea of crossing the line. We've made it, you know, you come into the entertainment business, fast cars, fast women. You know, that's what we're told. Oh, look how great that is. You come in, you're going to win. You're going to get that nice car, and you're going to get that girl. And, like, they're objects.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious what you think, because I feel like you're one of the most connected people in Hollywood. You have a big Rolodex of a lot of these men who have come out and been in the media and the press. You've met them all, or you've been interviewed by some of them.
Or I've worked with them. And some are very surprising. But what's more interesting to me is finding out about people that I thought were friends. Not just acquaintances, like I knew them, friends.
Everybody that I know on some level, good men, really good men, play a part in this. So the fact that we're seeing it at the top or in the public eye, okay, it's, you know, some light's being thrown on it. But from my family to good friends that I know, we all play a role in some regard, disregarding women, mistreating them, not seeing them for what and who they are. So, of course, we have horrible, horrible things, but that's like the top, right? What's happening every single day just in our everyday lives breeds that behavior and that mindset. So we're seeing it. So that's why I'm not surprised, you know.
A few years ago, I probably wouldn't have been surprised. I remember there was a time in my life that I thought I've never met a woman who's ever told me she's been raped or sexually assaulted. So I think, how could that possibly be true? So what I realized was I was unconsciously sending the message that I was not a safe person for them to talk to these things about. And part of that is I do from, you know, when I was in comedy, making like problematic jokes, which are fucking inappropriate and that are, you know, that are part of, I think, the problem of portraying women as people not to be believed or making light of, you know, these topics. What I didn't realize until later, when I actually started kind of educating myself about the issues and speaking out about them, is that women then, who had in my lives for years, started to tell me that they had. I felt like I experienced it very differently, and also started to examine my own behaviors in sort of contributing to the culture that allows these things to happen.
When you look at the Me Too movement and women just in general coming out about their experiences, we must also then know as men that they're reliving their trauma. Right? Stuff, for many of them, stuff that they buried away a long time ago, right? They're reliving that in this moment for the greater cause of we as a people. I don't want to call it a wonderful time or a great time or anything like that, but it is a wonderful time in respect to deciding which side of history you're going to be on, right?
I don't know if I can say this. My ex-wife is suing me because I made an amusing remark about her. She lives on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And she was coming home late at night and she was violated. That's how they put it in the New York paper. She was violated. And they asked me if I would comment on it. And I said, knowing my ex-wife, it probably was not a moving violation.
And she got very drunk and slept with me. And the next morning, she just looked at me like, I feel like she had felt like she had raped herself with me somehow.
People have always told me I have a sick sense of humor. To my circle of friends, I'm tame. My sister's off the charts. I play practical jokes on her constantly, though. I got her so good a few weeks ago. I replaced her pepper spray with silly string. Anyway, that night, she got raped. And she called me the next day going, "You son of a bitch!"
Congratulations, you 5 ladies no longer have to pretend to be attracted to Harvey Weinstein.
So we're at a critical juncture of our history, especially as Americans and our American culture.
I think the culture that we live in allows for this sort of behavior, and I don't think people are supported when they do come forward.
I feel like some men justify their actions. Maybe someone smiled at them, flirted with them. It's not an invitation to rape someone or harass someone.
This happens way too often. And I'm realizing that it happens to pretty much everyone.
We know that statistically speaking, that it's such a minority of women that report abuse, right? And we've been saying that forever, somewhere around 15, 20%. Reported. That means it's a whole lot more have been abused, right? Mm-hmm. And now they're coming out and they're saying it, right? So we really shouldn't be that shocked by it, you know? And I'm not that caught up with men who are, you know, who are being outed. Nor am I that caught up with, you know, notions of good guys and bad guys. Right. It's a thin-ass line between a good guy and a bad guy.
So you asked.
Right? And really, it's really rooted in how the law is defined. You could do some crazy shit and be on the side of the law, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Do you think that men feel like they can just treat women any way they want?
I have a 15-year-old son who's got a lot of friends. And I see the way they treat women, girls, all over the social media, in their own home, at school, right? And then when they become someone that does have power, they use these behaviors in their power.
Some of it is power, is dominance.
Yes.
Right?
That's true.
Is being dominating, is being taught that women are of less value, so your job is to dominate them. You know, when we've been talking a lot about the entertainment industry, right? The music industry, you know, so much of it, and some of you men, you know, that's your business, that's your art, your craft. But how much of that is built around the objectification of women? I think our sons, our boys, unless we're very intentional of being right on top of them, they are being taught to be misogynistic and they don't even know it.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
They are taught the hatred of women is like getting in there. How could it not? Okay. When you look at what they're inundated with, right? Unless we're very intentional, you know, and every time they go out of the house, when they come back in, we gotta retune them up again, you know, and hope that we're giving them a bigger tune-up than the messages they're being fed. And the truth of the matter is we're not. And we're gonna be truthful, we're not, right? I don't want to be 100%, but I'm going to say there's very, very few men, if any, that get a pass on not contributing to the problem. You know, and we might not be doing the things that would be deemed as illegal, right? Rape, assault, etc., right? But the truth of the matter is, men who do those things, they don't do it without the permission of the rest of us, right? We create the collective socialization of manhood.
You nailed it. Yep. Good men are a part of this. People who are good people are a part of this. In every conflict, you have a perpetrator, a bystander, and a victim. And what people need to learn is the bystander plays the greatest role in any conflict. A bystander can change a conflict. A perpetrator, when a victim says, please help me, the perpetrator goes harder. We're the bystander within our group, and we have the greatest responsibility. So if I have power, I want to use it for that.
Well, if you look at society, right, we are defined as good men, as well-meaning men, as righteous men, and we can wear that tag, that label, that title, and not be invested in the well-meaning of other people. Yeah. As long as we individually are not hurting anyone,
that's right.
Right? We are well-meaning men, good men, and we can stand by and watch atrocities happen to other people and not intervene, not teach others not to. We cannot challenge that behavior and not lose any of our status, right? You're still a good guy. You're still a well-meaning guy. You know, I don't know. We live in a country that's built around individualism, you know? It's kind of fluid throughout our Constitution about you and your individual rights as a person. And that's carved out this thinking for us as Americans take care of me and mine, and whatever's going on with everyone else, I have no responsibility unless I want to. So I could watch terrible things happen to people, and I could stay right here in this spot, and I'm gonna still sleep good at night, and everybody is gonna still see me as a wonderful guy, you know?
This picture is everywhere. Al Franken, at the time a comedian, groping a woman who is asleep.
O'Reilly has been on the defensive after allegations of sexual misconduct.
Kevin Spacey hasn't responded to any of the latest allegations.
White House Staff Secretary Rob Porter is accused of physically assaulting both his ex-wives.
Larry, you do realize now that we, this group of women you so heartlessly abused, are now a force, and you are nothing.
I'm honestly, I'm not surprised, and I think that's kind of the saddest part. Each new headline, I'm kind of now like, oh, okay.
I know that there's more to come out. There are more people that I've looked to or thought were wonderful, wonderful, wonderful examples of humanity.
But to me, the most shocking thing is that the response that survivors get in terms of something being done is not really happening.
Because of the Me Too movement, I started thinking about my own silence and complicity. I remember being 17 years old and having a guy that was a really popular guy. He was a football player, and I was out with him, and he was drinking, and he was dating a girlfriend of mine because I was friends with all the girls, and he cheated on her in front of me. And I remember being so conflicted of who my loyalty was to in that moment. Was it to him? The popular dude on the football team, the hunter, the guy that could probably kick my ass? Or was it to his girlfriend, who's also my friend? And I remember I didn't say anything to her. And I just had to live with that. And I didn't even remember it until the Me Too stuff happened. Because I started to think about, what are all the times that I've been silent? And where does that start? And I remember bros before hoes in high school, right? The guy code. It's like I have been conditioned my entire life to have an allegiance to men. So much so that I've also known recently a few men that have gone down, and my subconscious thought is, I know him. She must be lying. My first reaction is, I'm not believing her. That's fucked up. And that's me. So let's get specific. Who at the table has seen something and didn't say anything? I mean, come on. Objectification, harassment, of course, and then not said anything. What happened?
I think about like back in my 20s at bars or something, I would see guys do things where they just grab a random girl, or they would say something to them and put them down in certain ways if they didn't make out with them or do whatever it may be. And if I spoke out against them, then they would say, screw you, get away from us, you're not a part of our group, and then I would be alone or I'd be isolated. So I think it was a fear of, okay, I don't want to say anything to rub anyone the wrong way, I just want to fit in.
I'm someone that speaks up in general.
I know.
And even in that, someone who champions equality of people. Absolutely, I have just sat quiet with some things, because you put a line, well, that one's not so bad. Even if it's just manipulation. I'm not talking about people that are like being strong-arming somebody. Just talking about manipulating a little bit. I got a studio, want to come do a record, right, to this really cute girl. And I know what's happening. I know that they have no interest in this person other than to bring them over so they can get busy or something. And I stay quiet.
You talk about power and dominance, I think about business even. Because every time I'm in a meeting with a man or with a white person or any other person of a privileged identity, there are things that I notice, and I can make the decision to say something or to not say something, right? Okay, do I not say anything, and then therefore I get to benefit from this relationship where this person thinks that I agree with them, or do I say the thing and risk that?
Were there moments where I didn't say anything? Were there moments that, I looked at my buddy and he was my friend, but I looked at him deep down with disgust because I wasn't okay, because I was the good guy and he was the jerk, but he was still my buddy. And I just said, okay, that's the culture of, of this team I'm playing on, and this culture of the playground that I'm on right now. And I wouldn't say anything. And now growing up, with 2 little boys of my own and hopefully wanting to have a daughter in the future, all of us have to take responsibility. It's not okay to just say, I'm a good guy.
And when we get to say we're a good guy, what's the pass that we're actually giving ourselves, So is a thin line between all of that. And then if we are such good guys, then how are these men doing what they're doing in our presence? I really believe that we, the majority of men who don't perpetrate violence against women and girls, we're at more fault in some respect than the men who do, because they can't do it without our permission.
I got a question for Lewis. I'm just curious. So you mentioned earlier that you just wanted to be accepted. You weren't always really liked. You wanted to fit in, right? What did it feel like?
In middle school and high school, just putting my hand on a buddy of my shoulder, a teammate of my shoulder, would shrug it off and be like, don't be gay. It was looked at as weak growing up because the term for not cool was gay. And I'm a very affectionate person. Scooter knows this. I was just rubbing his shoulders. I'm like hugging everyone here. And so I had to put on masks throughout my entire life to fit in and to be accepted and to feel like I had value in the world with my community.
You know, to call men, we talk a lot about this man box, right? About the how men socialize, you know, and in that box is be tough, be aggressive, be dominating, you know, don't ask for help, don't show feelings, don't show emotions, you know. Women are objects, women are less value, women are property of men, don't be gay, be straight. All of this is in that box. And for many of us as men, and when I'm listening to you, I was thinking about that, many of us are being held hostage to that box. We really don't want to be in it, you know what I mean? But it's also safer in the box, based on our experiences, than outside the box. At least you fit in. When you get outside the box, now you could be alone, you're on your own, you know what I mean?
That's how I always felt,
You're dealing with the ridicule, and I was hearing all of that.
So then you grow up, you're 6'20", you're a good-looking white football player, you got a top-rated podcast, so you can get everybody you want.
I've got a girlfriend.
You got a girlfriend now, but in general, like, as you were single, you could get any woman you want. As young men, as boys, like, it made us cool if we got the girl.
Absolutely.
In high school, who was the coolest guy? Whoever was dating the hottest girl, right? That's a part of us.
Totally.
I mean, when I get direct messages on Instagram from women that tell me I'm perfect and they look the way they do, I just try to delete. Because it's conscious, because I know where that goes, and I know that I'm also weak. I'm not perfect. I'm far from perfect. I adore my wife.
Far.
Super far from
So
perfect.
far. Can't even see the other side.
So far as you are young.
The ageism.
You got it's a great response. I give you
It's a fun response.
So my question was basically like, well, what do we do when we have that power? Because it seems like there's a direct correlation with the men that we're seeing go down and an abuse of that power.
I mean, I can speak to that, you know, having fame, right, and having people interested, it's an intoxicating thing. And I think that it becomes so easy to not see people as full human beings. And that's what we, I think, accidentally don't do when we're talking over women or all the other things that I also work to be cognizant of and try not to do as well. Can I also say that the phrasing, interestingly, even getting women, right, takes their agency out of it, right?
But here's the thing. We're all taught growing up that we can get women if we do this, or this, right? This is like, especially if you become a celebrity, like you can get her.
I mean, it's not a good way to look at it, but to talk about it in real talk, that's what our boys are taught. As a boy, think about it. The more interest you show in a girl, and sexual conquest is not your goal, well, then your manhood is in question, right? So they don't even talk about dating, first of all. They don't use dating.
Did you hook up with her?
They'll use hookup. It's like, I want to hit that.
Yeah.
I want a piece of that. Anybody know her? I want to tear that shit up. Think about the terminology, you know? Then 2-3 years later, they say, you know, Mr. Porter, we don't say hit that no more. We say smash that.
That's right.
You know, so just
it seems like it's evolved.
Yeah, and think about what has evolved. Violence has evolved, right? Misogyny has evolved. More aggression has evolved.
Can you tell me a little bit about your background and who you are?
I'm a philosophy professor. I teach philosophy at Dartmouth and sometimes at Princeton, writing about violence against women. It occurs in different cultures all over the world in different forms. In the US, I think it's more accepted as part of, I don't know, this script we're getting, that sex is about the male predator going after the female prey and dominating her and having his way with her, taking advantage of her.
If you walk down the street and a man says, hey, you got great legs, or girl, you better give me your phone number, or whatever it is, it's just something we're taught to deal with on a daily basis.
Girl, how you doing? Somebody's acknowledging you. They're beautiful.
When I'm like looking at empty seats in the train, I'm like, okay, there's a woman, and I'm like, I'm gonna sit next to her because I trust her more so than the eyes that I feel watching me when I get on the train.
He grabbed my like upper thigh, like in my the crotch area.
He started to touch my leg, stroke my leg, tickle it.
Men are taught to pursue. Men are taught to chase.
Literally chase after us. I am not safe from that. The people that I care about in my life are not safe from that.
It was always this fear that was instilled in us.
So to some extent, we think that it's just normal. There is some connection.
But we're also socialized to grow up thinking it's our job to be the protector, to be the alpha, to be the provider.
On my view, I think that's part of the problem. I mean, I'm a mother. I get the protective instinct. But women shouldn't need to be protected by their men from other men. It's connected, I think, to the view that women aren't viewed as fully human, fully worthy of respect, but rather, potentially prey for some men, and then it's the job of other men to rush in and protect them. Like, I don't want to be protected. I want to be left alone. I want to be able to walk down the street safely.
The microaggressions on a daily basis, the small amounts of discounting women or sexualizing women or any number of other things is so pervasive that I had never noticed it before 3 years ago. But now, every day, every week, I'm talking to people about things that they're doing that are oppressive in various ways or saying.
You know what's sad about that, for me, my perspective, is the fact that you just noticed it 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That's probably a lot of people.
Yeah.
How do you not notice something? And this is not personal to you.
Yeah.
How do you not notice something unless you're so acclimated to a behavior that's so wrong? I see someone dead on the street somewhere or a car accident. It's hard for me to look at, right? Because I'm not acclimated to that behavior. An ER person, doctor is around it. It's just fine. They're comfortable with it. We as men are just comfortable with stuff. Like we see behavior, the fact that it doesn't jar us and make us go, whoa, and the fact that you say just 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem we got to investigate, right? And talk about.
See, women don't tell us. Women don't tell us on a day-to-day basis what they experience.
Because they be all day.
Well, think about it. Think about it. Well, they protect us.
Every day.
They protect us.
Yeah.
If your wife came home every day and told you every fucking thing a guy did,
we'd be constantly angry
what are you gonna
and
do
wanting
with
to
that?
kill everybody.
Right. They actually protect us from ourselves. They carry that burden. And the truth be told, they might have to tell us about some of our friends. They love us. They live in community with us. They care about us. And then they have to protect themselves from us at the same time. They don't burden us with our behaviors.
That makes me want to go to consent.
Yeah.
Because we're obviously having an issue with consent. Like, what is consent?
Consent is someone saying, yes, I want this.
Yeah, that's a fine line, too.
But I'm hearing over and over again that young guys in college have no idea what consent means.
Well, let me just answer that piece and then we throw it back out. We did a survey of about 300 boys, right? And somewhere around 80% of them did not know what consent was. High school, middle school age boys, right?
Is it because they don't know what consent meant or they don't care?
Well, all of that gets blended in there because caring to know means you care, right? And a lot of time not knowing, ignorance breeds that. So all of that's mixed in there.
And media, even. I would say, I was watching a show the other day. It's one of the most popular shows right now. In the first episode, the woman says no to the guy about 15 times. Oh. He's like, oh, let me come over and study, or let me, help you with this, or come on, let's hook up. And he's one of the good guys, right? But what is that teaching us, right? And I myself had not been introduced to the idea of affirmative consent, right? I thought no means no, right? And the difficulty of being able to say no, particularly when you've been socialized, I think, as a woman to not disobey men. There's a power dynamic, there's a size dynamic. if we're not creating the space consciously, sort of at each step of the way, especially for new sort of hookups and, then we're running the risk of people not being able to say the no.
And you hear these men over and over and over again talk about how they're so confused because it was consensual. Or come out and call another woman a liar. And then, of course, who do we believe? We believe the man.
So,
which is the same, it's just implicit in that, too.
So it's things that we need to teach men, right? So your example was trying to convince her, right? We call that coercion, right? Alcohol, right? Men use alcohol. 9 out of 10 times in those situations, the boy is never drunk. The girl is the only one that's drunk because he's intentional in feeding her alcohol, right? To get her to the place of incapacitation. She can't give consent. But there was a time when we was talking about consent, and it was all wrapped around no means no, right? So if she's drunk, she didn't say no. So now, what we've changed that from is not only whether or not she says no, she also has to say yes.
It's easy when a woman says no. Okay, yeah, I understand that. It's easy when she's intoxicated, where she's passed out. You should understand that. But there's a lot of instances where these guys are like, I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. You gave me the guidelines. I did it right. And because I valued my future, I wouldn't even risk that, because from a very early age, I had very large ambitions for what I wanted my future to be. Every interaction I ever had along the way, I thought of what would happen if I did something here, there. I was that guy that if she even said no in excitement, what? No, I want to be clear.
If she said no and you way backed off, is that because you value her or because you value you? See,
and that's the so I want to answer that. The truth, I was scared for me.
Yeah, and the
truth is I was scared for me because I know in my mind, I thought I valued her. Right. So if I heard that word, I was like, wait a second, you're destroying this idea that I have of who I am,
right?
And I'm not willing to risk that idea.
So it's about valuing you, but I think what I'm hearing you say, more so than you seen yourself as a man who respected women, you seen yourself as a man who respected you, yourself.
I think that's where it starts. I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
But I think everything plays off of that. She's not of value to you. And when she's not of value, she gets limited respect. You know what I mean?
My question for you, for that kid who feels like me.
It ain't many like you.
I understand.
Ain't many like
but
you.
I understand.
It ain't many like you.
I appreciate you saying they're not many like me. Let's talk about why I'm like me. I'm like me because I valued myself enough that I wanted to, in that value women. And we talk about healthy relationships. And the first thing we tell someone in a healthy relationship is you can't love someone else until you love yourself.
Right.
So if we want to start really making these young men the men that we're talking about, we have to stop telling them just not only to value women, but to first say, to value yourself.
That's right.
You
You're
have to
100%
value
right.
women. If you're really a man, you're not gonna act like that. Value yourself first, and then we can go somewhere else. And that isn't always the political thing to say, but it's a solution.
Now, I hear what you're saying, and I don't totally disagree with it. What I would challenge is that most men are good. They have a high value of themselves, but too much of a value, rather than it stemming from the reason why I'm a good man. What makes me good is how I see others. The fact that I fight for social justice, that I fight for all things that help humanity. That is, in fact, what makes me good. It's not because I'm good, so therefore I do these things. I do these things, therefore I'm good. Now, this is coming also from a man who believes this, but also I have a history, a long history of hurting women. Not abusing them intentionally, nothing I would go to jail for. I'm on the right side of the law. But I teach my son to have a high regard for women while I was unfaithful to his mom. Right? I was unfaithful to his mom for a long period of time. And yet I'm telling him to respect women. I believe in respecting women. And yet, with that strong belief, was not.
So, Jamey, you're one of my best friends. Where does it come from?
Well, I'm not going to blame it on nothing. I want to say one thing. My behavior, I own, right? So I had a life since the time I was 7 years old of inappropriate sexual exposure with different people. people that lived with us, house cleaners, and family friend, son. I looked up to this person that was around, and there was a few years of sexual behavior. I didn't have trauma, so I thought. And then when I got older, now I'm 15, 16 years old. Now I'm with a woman that's much older. I thought I was cool. I wasn't being traumatized. But what was this doing to my brain? It wasn't until years later, till I was around 35, that I had a breakdown. And I started remembering, wait a minute, I wasn't a participant in all this behavior, as I used to think my whole life. I was coerced into it. My whole life, I was being fed and taught to have sexual feelings towards people, to see them as objects. And this absolutely changed the way who I am and how I treat women, how I see women. And rather than dealing with it in a healthy way, my life started blowing up, and I almost, like, some people will say acting out. It all comes from that. But see, I feel like that would be an excuse.
Yeah, but is it an excuse to say that you were abused when you were 7 or 8 years old?
No, that'll explain part of how I became, but won't excuse it.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to excuse your behavior, but the fact is that's real shit. You were abused as a child.
Yeah.
Okay? So you and I haven't even gone deep about what happened to you. And that's probably on me for not asking you or not knowing how to ask you. But I don't think men are trained to be able to talk about this or to hold it.
I don't think every survivor should feel any obligation to tell her story. I don't want to be viewed as putting pressure on people. But it is really helpful to be able to hear someone else tell their story, because it doesn't just go away if you don't somehow work through it or process it.
Like a year ago, I was on the train. I take the train often. And this man sat down next to me, and he pulled out his penis and started masturbating. And there were no other people really on the train, on that train car. And there was another woman with me, and both of us, I felt it so uncomfortable and so scared, and really just and he was looking at me, and so I got up and got off the train and went into another car, and the woman and I both kind of made eye contact, and we ran together, and he followed us from that train car into the next train car, and we had to run into another train car after that. And it's and that's not even the first time that a man has exposed himself to me in public, right? The idea that he thought that he was so, and no one checked him. No, there were no consequences for him. I know, when I was a lot younger, 12, I had been kind of coerced into oral sex when I was really uncomfortable and had no idea what it was. My oldest niece is, I think, turning 11. And that she's this small, innocent being, and that that could be part of her experience too is terrifying.
It happened right after college in my first job at a Wall Street bank. And I was so excited because I had this great job. And my boss at the time, he would offer to take a few of us that worked for him out for dinner or drinks after work. So after a few months of him doing that, one night we were sitting at a bar, and I had had a couple glasses of wine, and he said, "I want to date you, and I need to tell you what the perks are for dating me." He said, "You'll get a perfect performance appraisal. I'll mark you as perfect in every area. You'll get extra days off because I won't look to see if you're here or not. And because I have perfect credit, you'll get usage of my credit card so you can buy clothes and shoes and suits and scarves for yourself." I felt trapped. I felt scared. And I felt invisible. This was a big bank, a big Wall Street bank. So I stopped going to the after-work dinners, and I tried to avoid him at all costs. But he kept pursuing. So now he would say things in the copy room. He would make the suggestion, He would remind me how long he'd been at the firm and how much power he had to help me get promoted. And at that point, I made the decision to leave this company. And this was the company I thought I'd retire from, that I'd work for my entire life. And what I have realized in sharing this story is that I walked away from a career and a dream that I had for myself. So when I look back, I wish I had spoken up. Even if I would have lost my job, I wish I would have found my voice at that time and spoken up for myself.
The earliest memory that I have, I was like 4 or 5. And it was my own father. He would force me to give him different sexual acts, perform sexual acts on him when my mother wasn't home, when he would be taking care of me and my mom was at the store or running errands. He told me that that was the way that a daughter showed love to her father. And I didn't know. I was a kid. There was a little part of me that didn't believe him. I felt like it was wrong and weird. But this was my dad, so I just trusted what he said. The last time that I was sexually assaulted was 5 years ago. I went out with some girlfriends for a girls' night out. And we were having a good time. We were dancing and laughing. One of my girlfriend's boyfriend shows up. And he buys a drink for everyone, a round of drinks. And I'm not a big drinker, so I debated on whether or not I should have another. But I kind of just went with the moment, and I said yes. After a few sips, my body started feeling really strange. I felt really disoriented and groggy. And everything went black. The next thing I remember was waking up in my girlfriend's apartment, naked, with her boyfriend on top of me. I wanted to tell my friend what had happened. She ended up not believing me, even though we had been good friends for a long time, college roommates. And the saddest part for me is knowing that he's still up there, possibly doing this to other people.
So I was with my husband in the south of France. I went for a walk, and I saw a man standing in a driveway, and I felt sufficiently ill at ease, not really, but sufficiently that I just said hello. I said, bonjour, and he said, bonjour. But I just kept walking, and then seemed like seconds later, bam, something slammed into me from behind, grabbed me, threw me in the side of the road, hit me very hard, knocked with his fist, knocked out my contact lenses, and I was down. And I did not know what was happening. You know, I just thought, it's a nightmare. I just kept, let me wake up, this is a nightmare. And then when he started the sexual assault, it was almost as if it was a relief, because I thought, that's what this is. And I've talked to a lot of women who just assume they're going to be raped at one point or another in their lives. It's just a matter of when, not if. And it was, all right, I got the rape script. I know what to do. You know, try to accommodate him, give him what he wants, you know, just say you want to live. And my eyes were already swollen shut by that time. I'd been hit in the head with a big rock. When I was conscious, I was talking with him, reasoning with him, and he knew that what he had done and was continuing to do was wrong, and that he had to cover his tracks and that he had to kill me. So he's strangled me into unconsciousness several times. One time I woke up as he was dragging my body down into this ravine. I guess he was going to leave my body at the bottom of the ravine. And I managed to play dead, held my breath for long enough till I could no longer hear his footsteps, you know, walking away. So I did make it up to the road, and eventually a tractor came by, and I just stood right in front of the tractor. so the person would have to take me in. And he picked me up. He took me to the nearby farmhouse where a bunch of people were gathered. And I said I was attacked by a man. And nobody believed me. They said, she must have been hit by a car. It was so difficult for people to believe what had happened. And it was difficult for me to believe what had happened as well. Even though I was rescued, I was taken in an ambulance to the hospital in Grenoble and was hospitalized for 11 days. And it turned out it was the 25-year-old who lived right across the street.
I can't even imagine. 'Cause I can try, but my experiences don't allow me to do that. I don't know what it would, I don't know what it feels like to walk down the street and see someone and have to be afraid or to think that I could be raped. That's not my experience. My experience is imagining, what if that happened to my wife? And can I ask what did your husband do? I mean, I would have wanted to kill that person.
It actually took him months before he told me what this was like. But he saw me in the back of the ambulance and he couldn't recognize me. My face was swollen out of recognition and he didn't know if I were alive or dead. And he said he just went away from the ambulance. He just screamed, he just shouted. If my husband had been walking down that same road that same morning, nothing would have happened to him.
Nothing.
He would have been fine. I was attacked for no other reason than that I was a woman walking down that street at that time. So I think that knowledge that I had and that my husband shared was probably the most difficult thing for us to come to terms with. I think we're still coming to terms with this. I can do anything. I don't feel constrained in any way because of the assault, but I will not go walking by myself in a remote, rural or wooded area. I don't need to. I can live without that.
My whole life I was holding a secret inside that I was afraid to talk to people about because I felt like I wouldn't be accepted if people knew. I felt like I would get made fun of, I'd be embarrassed, I'd be less than a man. And I was being sexually abused and raped. Yes. It was the babysitter's son. I'm 5, I don't really know what's happening. I know something's wrong. There's nothing when you're 5, when you get raped by a man, there's no hotline that says, here's what to do, here's who to call. There's no question you tell your parents. You're not told how to talk to your parents about that. You're just not told that you can talk about it. And as a straight white male, it was like the worst thing that could have happened. I remember feeling like I always had to defend myself in sports, in school. If anyone picked on me, if anyone said I was stupid, in sports, if anyone tried to abuse me in any way physically, it was like I had to come back with dominance to show that no one could ever be more man than me. And I think it was, 4 years ago, I finally started to open up about this. It was terrifying to open up about it. It was terrifying to tell my family, friends, because I thought no one was going to look at me the same way again. And as terrifying as it was, it brought me this unbelievable sense of freedom and peace that I've never felt in my life. And, it's horrible no matter who it's to, man, woman, gender nonconforming. It's horrible no matter who it's done to. But we don't really hear. I never heard an example of anyone who's come out, let alone the archetype of the white male jock. So someone that looks like me who's come out and said, this is what's happened. And yet 1 in 6 of the guys that I played football with, out of 100 players on my team, probably happened in some way. So I think you probably know a lot of the statistics better.
1 in 6 boys are raped.
Men have been sexually abused.
In some way.
In some way, yeah.
1 in 6 between the age of 0 and 18, and girls are 1 out of 4 at the same time.
Exactly. I didn't think this happened to a lot of boys, right? I just thought it was just me. And so I was the one who was wrong and I was bad because of it. And the more I'm talking about this and opening up now through speaking about it, writing about it, I'm getting hundreds of essays of men who are telling me, this is what happened to me when I was 9. This is what happened to me when I was 6. I've been married for 25 years, my wife doesn't know. Whether it's sexual abuse or something else that men are ashamed of, I think it's part of the thing that conditions men to protect themselves or to do things to hurt other people. Mm-hmm. And so when I was in college, I never had a sip of alcohol because I wanted to be fully conscious and aware of the decisions I made, but I wanted to be in full ownership of my communication and my actions. For me, I was so conscious of just not wanting to hurt people. It was never my intention to want to hurt people because I was hurt.
So I appreciate so much you sharing that. So, you know, before starting A Call to Men, I was a social worker. You know, I was director of an alcohol and drug treatment program. And right about the age you said, right around the age of 30 or so, men in that program would disclose for the first time that they were sexually assaulted as a boy. And the way they coped with it was through alcohol and drug addiction. And so they're here now trying to, you know, get and maintain abstinence from alcohol and drugs, and they are disclosing for the first time what happened to them. So many men take different paths to cover up all the feelings and everything that they're experiencing as a result of that.
Here's something else that I noticed until I noticed 4 years ago is that I was resenting everyone else around me, and I was resenting myself because I wasn't allowed to express who I was. I felt like I wasn't able to say, this is how I feel, this is what I've gone through, because I didn't think anyone would accept it. And I thought they would just push me away. So I was always living in a sense of defensiveness towards everyone. So I try to have compassion for people that are as defensive and guarded like I was, and still am, and still working on it every single day.
What's interesting, though, is I think something good to point out quickly is our experience, and 2 out of 6, is different. It allows us to be empathetic, but it's different than that of women. As a man, how this has affected me in the world in terms of progressing, in terms of being someone with power or not, someone not giving me a job because all those things. As a man, I have the privilege of that not defining me and affecting me in the same ways, certainly emotionally in that way, but as what women have to deal with and then have a whole gender
They're facing it
freedom,
all the time.
facing it all the time, still as adults.
The senior executive then offered us money, the equivalent of 10% of my monthly salary, to go to a strip club in order to maintain collegiality.
Melissa Taylor said that sexual harassment happened 20 years ago and is still happening to others in the workplace today.
It's a time where we really could have bring the workplace up to 21st century standards of dignity and equality. But I see a risk. There have been some activists who said, well, who cares if some innocent people go down?
We've interviewed them.
I spoke to them. I believe them. I'm just wondering if all women need to be believed.
The people of Alabama know that this is a hit job.
Okay, but these women, it's not the word, these women have put their name on it.
Women are especially good at lying.
Do we have to believe all the women? That was the question I posed before.
I'd like to believe all the women.
You'd like to, but will you or do you have to?
My doctor asked me, what kind of woman goes out without her husband?
Okay, well, what did I do to encourage that?
What was she wearing? Was she like, what did she drink? What, like, all these questions about like what she did.
And so when you get these responses, it makes you feel like you shouldn't say anything.
I grew up in a house where my mother took me to pro-choice rallies. You know, I managed and spent a lot of time talking to very empowered females. I married an empowered female. And I was talking to one of my clients who is an empowered female, and I was trying to fix it for her. My wife was sitting next to me, and she just looked at me and she goes, shut up and listen. Just tell her what she's saying is justified and listen to what she is trying to tell you. It changed the entire conversation. It changed how I looked at conversations.
Sitting back, it's hard for us to do as members of dominating groups. Sit back, don't be thinking about your response, what you're gonna say. They're halfway through what they're saying and you already got your response, and now you're just waiting on them to finish so you can say what you gotta say. So what does that mean? You didn't even hear the rest of what they said. You know what I mean? Sit and digest it, man, and own it.
We want to clarify that that's not what we meant, or that, you know, that maybe are you seeing this perspective, right? And I think there's a word my friend recently told me about called, it's epikey. It's sort of been mostly removed from the language. It's Greek originally. But it means withholding from having an answer to achieve a deeper state of understanding.
Wow.
And as men and as Americans who want to fix and do and we're, you know, and pursue our business, sometimes we're so caught up in the forward progress that we miss a lot of sort of the lateral progress and the depth of basically how we actually understand around us.
We've been talking about the whole time, we are all flawed. When you say, are you man enough? Are you brave enough? Are we brave enough to step forward with great intent and still acknowledge that we might be wrong in that intent? I think that we need to have this swift justice. I think that there are going to be mistakes on all sides in every single place. This is a complete gray area when you're being bold. But the greatest thing about the Me Too is about what happens next. And next is we got to get to a place where we can have conversation from a very flawed perspective, where men can come forward thinking they're doing the right thing, like I did that one day, and find out for someone else I didn't do the right thing, and then just listen to what they're saying.
I think often men try to like come in and like tell you about your experience or tell you about your life, and it's like, just listen. Listen to our stories, listen without judgment.
Obviously, there's different experiences that happen to people. Yes, some people get brutally attacked and, you know, there's blood and scars. So a lot of times I feel like maybe seeing that, people feel more sense of like it's worse than if someone was just sexually harassed in their job. You can have the same traumatic response no matter what the situation may be.
We believe that, oh, it's no big deal. Oh, it's not she'll get over it. It's nothing to worry about. But some people do hold on and they can't get past it. And it hurts.
I don't want to qualify that like I wasn't like forcibly raped, but to be forcibly exposed to someone is triggering and traumatizing. And, you know?
Before this assault, my husband and I had been trying to have a baby for about 6 months. Or as I prefer to say it, we'd stopped trying not to have a baby.
I get that.
After the assault, I couldn't let him that close to me for 2.5 years. So there's that loss of a physical kind of connection and giving it a completely twisted meaning. It's very different for different people, but there is something particularly violating about taking something that should be something you throw yourself into wholeheartedly and get a lot of pleasure out of, and making it a way of degrading you and showing you that you're worthless. You're just dirt.
What advice would you give to women that have been in your situation on any end of the spectrum, on ways that they can heal?
I found it very healing to take self-defense classes. Not all women do. Certainly getting support from other people. I found a rape survivor support group in Philadelphia about 6 months after my assault. And listening to the other women tell their stories enabled me to actually feel empathy for myself and enabled me to feel anger for the first time.
I think especially hearing other women who have told their stories about what they've been going through, and then you're like, oh, wait, I see a part of my story in her narrative. And if that was what she was going through, like, is my story connected to that as well? Oh, you too. Like, oh, okay.
Part of why I'm here and I'm speaking out and I'm sharing something so embarrassing and so personal is because I'm speaking for the women who can't share.
I had a lot of love and support, and also knowing that I knew what it was like to be happy, and I wanted to feel that way again.
Ooh. It's funny because you don't think of you put a lot of stuff in like the back of your head. You're like, all right, I'm gonna keep moving forward. I'm gonna keep like, oh, that's just the way it is, right? I'd forgotten about like 11-year-old Yazmin, right? But it's a part of like this insidious narrative around women's bodies being taken advantage of.
Jamey, what do you think the responsibility is on us men, knowing that most of the abuse and the harassment and the things that we're learning and reading about are happening at the hands of men to women?
I have a very strong belief that we share this belief that the world is imbalanced because of the inequality of women. That we can never realize true unity and salvation for all of humanity until women are flying as strong as men. So our responsibility is to, number one, we had said listen to them first. But I think it goes way back to when we're kids. We have to like build a whole new way. I've heard, you know, this term where men and women can't be friends? You know, they can't be friends and women can't be friends. Why is that? Because we're always talking about there's got to be a sexual relationship.
Because boys will
How
be boys.
sad is that?
Yeah.
The idea that my son couldn't have friends as women, how deprived would his life be? To make choices, to see the world, to know God, to know his own self, to just experience life, to have peace and unity and not get those perspectives from women because you can't be friends. That's some bullshit. I mean, I get it because that's how we're trained, but we got to change that.
So I think, you know, part of the reason we're filming this is because we're hoping to learn, but also give tools that we've learned over our years to the next generation so that they don't have to make the same mistakes. Because for our generation, for the most part, we're done. We missed it. You know, it's what do we do for our kids? And that's why I go back to this idea of, I'd love to say to my son, you know what, you go out there and you say you respect that woman, because that's great. But at certain points in his life, I want to give him that other tool of how can he translate that? We're talking about how we want to change men, but, you know, how do we speak to that man who needs help changing?
It's how we be with men, you know. We can love on each other and hold each other accountable at the same time. Far too often people, in my experience, has been that if I'm gonna love all over you, I'm gonna enable everything. And if I'm gonna hold you accountable, I just need to be beating you up, right? But we can love each other and be accountable at the same time. And so we could create that kind of environment for that man, there's a good chance he may come back and bring a friend.
So I think also you had talked about something that was different, right? And as a person of color, I, as a white person, should never tell you what your job is to talk to someone who devalues you as a person of color, right? That's not my job. Right? My job as a white person seeking to dismantle white supremacy and be an allyship is that I should have the conversation with that guy, right? In the same way as men, it's not on women to have that conversation and to have it in a polite way with that guy. But that is my job because I need to unburden some of those folks. So I think it's important to delineate what our roles are as men who are acting in an ally capacity versus not.
So what are some steps that men can take to support women in general? How can men become better allies, especially after an assault as tiny in certain men's view as, you know, an extra long massage or some derogatory statement, or as large as a rape? How can we as men hold space for women?
If somebody comes and tells you this story, just listen and just be with the person, support the person, respect her need for control over her environment and her safety. Let her decide if she wants to report or not to report, right? And then afterwards, for men to be able to think themselves about what they find scary, what makes them feel vulnerable, what makes them feel out of control.
I want men to lead from strength,
to listen, to not use assumptions,
and to no longer be silent.
From the boardroom to the locker room, you have a chance to like interject.
To say what needs to be said when it's uncomfortable.
It's exhausting, but it's worth it.
Be okay with being uncomfortable. So I think that's where real change can really start.
The men at this table, what can each of us do to be better allies, to amplify their voices? What are actual, tangible things that a man that's watching can learn from each of us right now?
I guess for me, I've learned that I'm on a lifelong journey to do that, right? Part of that journey for me is reading a lot about racism, sexism, and these things, filling in that knowledge gap that I don't have, right? Because the problem is often we don't know what we don't know. And the only way to do that and to be made aware of that is to put those experiences in front of us. And I can't wait for it to be people of color who want to tell me, or women who want to tell me. I have to take a proactive stance in that. I have to live in this tension between the man that I want to be and the man that I sort of am in the world, and not feel comfortable in saying I'm one of the good guys.
I spend a lot of time with men talking about how we're using our influence, right? And our influence creates platforms, right? You have influence. You've used your influence to create this platform. I think it's really important for us as men to be very intentional in that space.
Yes, sir.
I don't think, we was talking about being on the right side of history, and I don't think there's a time ever in our lifetime that it was more important than now to be intentional in the time we're spending with boys, right? You know, of course we're gonna shoot, hoop, play hockey, whatever we do, but it's not just about that anymore. You know, there was a time when that's all you did with your son, you know what I mean? Play ball and have a little conversation here, no, we need to be at a table like this here, very intentional, right?
Yeah. For me, it's three things: grow, share, and encourage. One of the greatest gifts someone told me, they said, when I told them that about my sexual abuse experience, they said, you've got to share this on your platform. And I was like, no freaking way am I going to talk about this publicly. And I was terrified. But when I finally did, it gave so many other men permission to start opening up and healing and going through their process, and encourage other people to share.
One of the things I love about the men I love and respect the most is the ability to say, I don't know. Not think they have the answer. So that when someone like Tony talks, you hear it. So with women, we believe it, but what are we doing tangibly? How are we doing? Are we honoring our wives every day? So my son sees me every day tell my wife, I respect you, I love you, and I hear you. Every day, even the times when it's challenging. I go in the world and try to let other men see the way that I treat her and my daughter. So tangibly, I think we just have to say, I don't know, and then learn how we can learn the no. You got something deep in there, I can feel
No,
it.
I mean, it's fun to go last because a lot of the things you would say have already been said. I mean, look, two of my favorite quotes are, a wise man knows nothing.
Yes,
so
sir.
you start there, you know nothing, and start listening. And then the other one is this idea of empathy. Plato's be kind, for everyone you meet walks a hard journey. And we all got our shit. So I think I want to start from a place of just raising my hand and saying, I'm ignorant, I want to listen, and I'm willing to make an effort. And then the tangible thing I'd say to young boys, Tony, you nailed it. You gotta take the time. Someday I'm making a commitment to myself. I'm gonna sit my two boys down and say, your dad has not always gotten this right, but you can be better than me. I'm so grateful that I took time in my day to sit here, to take hours and just sit here, and I feel growth. And I think the best thing we can do for women is let them know that they don't need to be the rock all the time. They don't need to protect me. You can sit and engage with me, and I will sit here and I will listen.
Yes.
I need to say one thing. I've known you a long time. You have tremendous flaws. Flaw after flaw after flaw. I wish I had a list of your flaws.
It's true.
But you're a man that owns them. And what I respect and love about what you're doing is that I spoke of someone that can say, I don't know. You are that man, brother. I know some other men that are able to do this. You're one of them. So I'm proud of you. And I'm proud of all the men that are here willing to do that as well. And all the other ones that will continue to come. I love you, brother. Thanks for doing
You're gonna
this.
keep that in the edit.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep it in the edit. Keep all that in the edit, right there.
Yeah.
If people don't see me yelling, keep it in the edit. You messed up. Keep that in the edit.
Gentlemen, thank you guys. I'm so grateful that you guys exist because I got a son and I want him to grow up in a world that it looks very different than it looks today. And the only way that can happen is if we do this. And if we give other men permission to do this. And I'm excited to tell my son the same thing. I appreciate you guys, and you're all good men. But let's together make sure we stay good men and good humans.
Thank you.
Cheers, fellas.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And I will absolutely do a group hug.
Group hug.
Do it.
Let's do it.
Woo! Thank you, everybody.
My husband is active duty military, and I have 3 children.
We have 2 little kids, Maya and Maxwell. Maya is about to turn 3. Maxwell is 8 months.
So I've got a 3-year-old daughter, Ava. I've got a 9-year-old, Ariana.
I typically help my son with his homework on a daily basis.
Every time they're in the car before we back out, seatbelts on.
I constantly give her affirmations about how wonderful she is.
I tell my kids I love them every moment. I'm very involved in their lives.
Okay, so now I'm gonna ask you some different questions. Do you know the statistics of child sexual abuse in America?
No, I don't.
No, I do not.
I don't think that we've actually sat down and talked about warning signs or what questions to ask or what conversation to have.
No, really never had any conversations with the schools on what their policies are about sexual abuse.
Do they run background checks?
I didn't check. I would assume all schools do.
That's such a good question. No, I don't know. That's scary.
They mustn't because they had me as a volunteer, so they didn't do a background check on me.
I honestly am ashamed to say this, but I don't know what the screening process is, and I actually just trust.
I've never run a background check, no. I feel like the worst mom.
Why do you think parents don't have these conversations?
I don't think that it'll happen to my kids because I'm really involved in their lives.
Nobody wants to think that a predator would be in their immediate circle.
Maybe they feel if they don't bring something up, then it won't happen.
It's fear. You know, as a parent, you just don't want to believe it.
So I'd like to introduce you to someone.
I'm Emily, so nice to meet you.
I'm Joelle. Nice to meet you too.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. I'm Jamey. You have a son that's 7. So when I was 7, was the first time I was sexually abused.
When I was a young teenager, I was sexually abused by the choir director at my high school, and he sexually abused me over a course of 2 years.
It happened again when I was 10 with somebody else for several years, under the watch of 2 parents who were all over me and loved me.
Thank you for sharing that with me. It's just, when you share your story, it just makes it so real. And to think that this is happening to so many and to think that it happened to you is just wrong on every single level.
Obviously, no parent wants to think that they're putting their child in harm's way.
I always want to do my best, and it kind of makes me feel like I haven't.
And the only way to be better is to have the conversations, be open. Oh, bless your heart. And the fact that you're feeling that obviously shows the extent that you love your children. So some of the ways maybe that we can like just be diligent is to be aware. Have I ever asked my school what their protocol is? And there's this nonprofit organization called Child Safety Pledge.
And they are a tremendous resource for anyone who wants to ask the tough questions.
As a parent, I pledge to do everything in my power to keep my children safe. I pledge to shatter the silence on child sexual abuse.
And shine light on our ability to prevent this tragedy from happening so frequently in our society.
I pledge to ask the tough questions
and help create an environment of transparency, accountability,
And safety in our youth-serving organizations.
I will sign this pledge, yeah.
Absolutely, I will.
I'm gonna go home, talk to my wife, and have her sign this pledge.
Appreciate you, bro. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.